everyone, this is Andrea and welcome to this edition of Talks in the Car. I want to encourage you today that God is able to take a situation, take your life, take whatever you've experienced, take whatever you've gone through and turn it around instantaneously. Yes, there are times when things have to go through a process, and God has us going through a process in order to teach us a lesson within that process. But then there are other times when God will come through like a rushing mighty wind and just change things instantaneously. If you remember some years ago, there was a gentleman, and I believe his name was Jeremy Meeks. Jeremy was by all standards a good-looking guy, African-American guy, young guy. He had beautiful blue eyes, and for those of us in this country, for an African-American to have naturally blue eyes, that's a rarity, and so that was a phenomenon. But he was a good-looking gentleman. However, the thing about Jeremy was that Jeremy had spent a tremendous amount of time behind bars. Jeremy was a part of a gang at one point, but whatever took place that allowed him to get his notoriety after he got out of jail, as soon as he was released from prison, he had spent about 10 years in prison. As soon as he was released, he went from being a criminal to being a model, to being on the runway of some high fashion model agencies. And he was picked up by a lot of people. And he went from having nothing to having everything. Even though Jeremy was, and the key word here is was a criminal by all case and purposes, a career criminal. He had been in and out of jail since his teenager years. Even though he was a career criminal, he was able to have a life-changing experience that turned everything around. People didn't care that he was a criminal, honestly. People were really just looking at the fact that he was a good-looking guy. But in that, he went from 0 to 100 literally overnight. And so I'm sharing that example with you to remind you and to encourage you that God can do the same thing for us. He can take you from point A to point B to point C to point D, all the way up in a matter of seconds, in a matter of minutes. God is able to do that in our lives. And we just have to at times just believe that God can change things instantaneously. Now, again, there are definitely times when God will take us through the process. And so times when we want things to move quickly, but they're moving at a slower pace because God is trying to teach us a lesson. God is trying to show us some things. God is trying to teach us some things. And so we can't go from 0 to 100 overnight. But there are times when God is still working miracles, when God is still moving in our favor, when God is still wanting to bless us instantaneously. So I encourage you, don't lose faith in what God is doing in your life. Even if something has taken place and it seems like it's a long time and seems like the process is a long time, that does not change the fact that God can change that situation instantaneously. You could be here today. You could be homeless today. You could be sick today. You could have been going through things for long periods of time, and then tomorrow wake up to something totally different. You could be feeling like you're stuck in a particular situation, but later on today you find yourself in a place of freedom. God has stepped in. So God can move instantaneously. Just keep your eyes, your mind, your heart, your belief focused on Him, remembering who He is. God's word is instantaneously. God's word can move things in an instant. God's word has power. And because God's word has power, It doesn't have to take years, months, weeks, days. It doesn't have to. God can come through your life in a whirlwind and change things in your favor. And once again, even if something seems like it's been taking a long time, even if you have been praying and asking God, God, I've been praying and I've been believing and I haven't seen the manifestation of your hand in my life yet. Even if you feel that you're at that place, God is still able to move instantaneously. He can still change your situation, so what the outlook looks like today can look totally different tomorrow. It can look totally different in a few hours. It can look totally different in a few minutes. But our job is to maintain our faith in God. Our job is to continue to trust, continue to believe, continue to know that what God said he was going to do in your life, he is going to do it. To know that God does not lie, that God does not go back on his word. So maintain your faith. Know that even if you haven't seen God do what you've been waiting for him to do at this particular second, God is still able and still willing to move instantaneously in your life. Go from 0 to 100 in a snap. The same way Jeremy's life was changed literally overnight. He went from prison to a runway. He went from having nothing to be a top paid model instantaneously. He actually had to do nothing. All he did was walk out of the jail cell and he was a changed man. And so I encourage you, keep your mind, keep your focus, keep your faith on God. Don't lose your ability to believe. Don't lose your faith in God. Don't lose your knowledge that God is able, God is willing, and that God has your best interest in mind. Keep the faith and watch God move instantaneously in your life. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, and we will see you next time on Talks in the Car.